I returned from a business trip to my family-run restaurant, but the staff refused to look me in the eye. "He's back." "Why?" one of them whispered. I asked my sister what was going on. "They know what you did," she said. I had no clue what she meant. 3 months later, the truth exploded online. When I walked into Mason's Pier House after my trip, the air felt different. Stale, heavy. The regular laughter and bustle of the kitchen were gone. Staff who had known me for years wouldn't look me in the eye. I found Elena behind the hostess stand, scanning reservations. I said, "Hey, what's going on? Why is everyone acting weird?" She barely glanced up. "They know what you did," she said flatly. I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" But she just went back to her clipboard like I wasn't even standing there. 3 months ago, before all of this, my life had been pretty simple. I ran the business side of the family restaurant, Mason's Pier House, which my parents started in 1985. It was a solid local spot along the Charleston waterfront, famous for its shrimp and grits and fried oysters. My sister, Elena, was the face of the restaurant. Customers loved her, the staff adored her, and frankly, the place wouldn't have survived without her energy. I loved working behind the scenes. I was the one negotiating seafood prices with grumpy suppliers at 6 a.m. and managing payroll headaches. It wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary. Our parents had finally stepped back about 2 years ago, leaving it fully to us. It wasn't easy, but it worked. Until it didn't. In January, I left for a 3-day trip to New York City. There was a food industry expo, a chance to meet some vendors and maybe bring some new ideas back home. I texted Elena updates, even sent a few photos of the chaos of Times Square, joking about how I could never live there. She responded with a thumbs up and good luck. Nothing weird. When I came back on a Friday afternoon, I immediately knew something was wrong. Normally, Liam at the bar would wave and yell something like, "The boss is back." Marta would flash a smile. Even the newer hires would nod or give a quick hello. That day, heads turned away. Conversations died mid-sentence. Plates clattered a little too hard. When I asked Elena what was happening, she gave me that cold "they know what you did" line and refused to explain. I spent that weekend in a fog. I called a few people on staff. No one picked up. I tried to reassure myself, maybe something else was going on, maybe it wasn't about me, but the pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. Monday, I tried to show up like nothing was wrong. Big mistake. Marta turned her back when I walked in. Liam muttered something under his breath when I tried to ask if he was okay. I caught a couple of the kitchen guys staring at me and whispering. I ended up in Elena's office again. This time, she barely looked up from her laptop. "You should take some time off," she said. "For what?" I asked. My voice cracked a little. "I can't explain right now," she said. "It's complicated. Just give it a few days." I left. I felt humiliated. Over the next few weeks, it didn't get better. If anything, the silence stretched wider. Every time I drove by the restaurant, I felt a little sicker. 3 months after that miserable homecoming, I found out what had been going on. It was a Sunday morning. I was drinking coffee and scrolling Facebook when I saw a post from a local gossip group, Charleston Whispers. Normally, it was full of neighborhood drama and petty complaints about parking. But today, the headline was about me. Mason's Pier House staff break silence, harassment allegations surface against co-owner. There were screenshots of alleged messages. Blurry security camera stills. Accusations from people I'd worked with for years, Marta, Liam, others, saying I made them feel unsafe. I dropped my mug. It shattered on the tile. I tried to read through the post, but the words blurred. The comments were a nightmare. Strangers calling me a predator. Saying they'd never eat at Mason's again. People I hadn't seen in 20 years popping up to share how they'd always gotten a bad vibe from me. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. I texted Elena. No answer. I called her again and again. Finally, late that night, she picked up. Her voice was tight. Mason, you need to step down. I didn't do anything, I said. Elena, you know me. You know me. There was a long pause. I thought so, she said finally. But there's video, Mason. The next morning, I drove straight to the restaurant. The place looked the same, the old wooden sign creaking slightly in the wind, the smell of fried seafood in the air, but I knew I wasn't welcome. Liam was outside smoking. When he saw me, he dropped the cigarette and practically ran back inside. I knocked on the side door until Elena came out. She didn't invite me in. In her office, she pulled up the video. It was grainy security footage from behind the bar. A man in a black polo shirt, the same uniform I wore, leaning way too close to Marta. Whispering something. She flinched and pulled away. It looked like me. If you squinted, if you weren't really paying attention, it could have been me. But it wasn't. My build is heavier. My hairline a little further back. The guy on the tape was a little shorter, a little leaner. I said, that's not me. Elena, look at it. Look closely. She didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she said, can you prove where you were that night? I dug through my phone. Pulled up photos from the vendor dinner in New York. Photos with timestamps, GPS tags. I had receipts, emails, even texts from Elena while I was away. I left the restaurant that afternoon with a pit in my stomach the size of the Atlantic. It took 3 weeks to untangle the whole mess. The real culprit was Austin, our assistant manager. He was a newer hire, someone Elena brought on while I was focusing more on expansion. He had been flirting aggressively with the staff for months, making Marta and others deeply uncomfortable. When I left for New York, he saw an opportunity. He wore the same uniform. Had a similar build from a distance. It was easy for the staff, already nervous, to assume it was me when they finally got the courage to speak up. By the time Marta came forward with more specific accusations and proof, Austin's texts, his threats, it was too late. He was arrested. Fired. Disgraced. But so was I. Even after my name was cleared legally, it didn't matter to the court of public opinion. Most people never read the follow-up articles. They saw the original headlines, made up their minds, and moved on. Elena apologized. She said she wished she had defended me sooner. That she hadn't known what to think. I told her I understood. But the truth is, I didn't. I still don't. After everything finally surfaced, there was no dramatic scene at the restaurant, no staff meeting where people apologized, no public announcement clearing my name. It was just quiet. The news reported Austin's arrest. A few local outlets mentioned that I'd been falsely accused. But those stories never got the attention the original scandal had. No one was interested in hearing about the mistake. People believed what they wanted to believe. Inside Mason's pier house, Elena tried to patch things up. She reached out to some of the staff who had left, trying to coax them back. She told the remaining ones that it had been a misunderstanding. Some nodded along. Others clearly didn't buy it. I was still toxic. Customers who had been regulars for years stopped coming. Sales dipped hard. Online reviews crashed, filled with people who had never even been there but were furious at the scandal they thought they knew about. I offered to resign officially to take heat off the business. Elena didn't argue. We signed the paperwork at a lawyer's office downtown. She brought coffee, I brought a pen. It was the least personal meeting we'd ever had. When it was over, we stood awkwardly on the sidewalk. She said, "I'm sorry, Mason." "I really am." I nodded. "Yeah. Me too." Then she turned and walked away. No hug. No long goodbye. Just gone. I didn't fight it. What was there to fight for? I packed up my life in a week. My apartment overlooked the docks, I couldn't even drink my morning coffee without seeing the restaurant sign in the distance, reminding me of everything I lost. I sold my furniture to neighbors, donated my books to the library. The only things I really cared about, some old family photos, a few cookbooks my dad had scribbled in, my grandfather's pocket knee, fit in 2 suitcases and a box. I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, renting a tiny second-floor apartment above a bookstore. It wasn't Charleston. It didn't smell like salt water. The streets were lined with trees instead of docks. It was quiet. I thought starting over would be easier. It wasn't. Even in Asheville, the memory of what happened followed me like a stain. At first, I thought I could slip into a new rhythm, consulting for a few local restaurants, offering advice on menu pricing, supplier contracts, stuff no one wanted to think about. The work was fine. The people were polite. But friendships? Trust? That was harder. When people asked what brought me to town, I mumbled something about wanting a change. When they pushed, I smiled and steered the conversation elsewhere. Some nights, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying everything over and over, Elena's cold voice. Marta's terrified face. The way people turned their backs. The way my life burned down without warning. The worst part wasn't the accusation. It was how quickly everyone I loved, everyone I trusted, believed it could be true. A few months into living in Asheville, I ran into an old friend from Charleston at a farmer's market. Dean. He used to fish crabs off the dock near our restaurant when we were kids. We stood there, both holding baskets of apples, staring at each other like ghosts. He said, "Heard about what happened?" I tensed automatically, bracing for it. Dean scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. "Sorry, man. SHT was rough." I nodded. I didn't know what to say. He hesitated. "You ever think about fighting it? Like, really fighting it?" I shrugged. "Does it even matter?" He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but then he just sighed. "Good to see you, anyway." And just like that, he faded back into the crowd. I didn't realize how lonely I'd become until that night. I sat on my little second-hand couch, a plate of reheated pizza balanced on my lap, watching the windows darken. No texts. No calls. No one checking in. My life used to be full, noisy kitchens, packed dinner services, laughter spilling into the streets at midnight. Now it was just silence. And the thing about silence is that eventually, it makes you start asking yourself ugly questions. Was it my fault? Did I trust the wrong people? Was I blind to warning signs? Did I deserve it? Every few weeks, Elena would send a short text. "Hope you're doing okay. Mason, thought you might want to know we got a good review today. Miss you." I never answered. I couldn't. It wasn't that I hated her. I didn't. Part of me still loved her like the sister who used to slip me extra pie when our mom wasn't looking, who used to sneak out onto the docks with me after hours to talk about dreams and futures. But another part of me, a louder, sharper part, knew that when it mattered most, she hadn't fought for me. She hadn't even asked for my side of the story before deciding I was guilty. One night, a year to the day after I left Charleston, I found myself back at the waterfront, not Mason's pier house, but a little dockside dive 2 towns over. The place smelled like old beer and fresh catch. Neon signs buzzed overhead. The bartender didn't know my name. I sat there, nursing a whiskey, watching strangers laugh and bicker over pool games. And I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe life isn't about fixing what broke. Maybe it's about learning how to carry the pieces. A few weeks after that night at the dockside bar, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter, folded neatly inside a plain white envelope, no return address, just my name in careful handwriting. It was from Elena. She wrote about the restaurant, how it was still standing but quieter. About our parents, who were starting to ask why I didn't come visit anymore. About herself, how she was waking up at night thinking about the look on my face when she told me to leave. At the bottom, she said, "If you ever want to come home, the door's open. I'll be here. I'm sorry for not being better when you needed me." I read it 3 times. Then I put it back in the envelope and slid it into a drawer. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know if I wanted to. Life went on. Slowly, almost stubbornly, the days filled up. I found a few steady consulting gigs. Helped a new coffee shop launch their menu. Took long walks through the Blue Ridge Parkway trails. Started going to a weekly trivia night at a local brewery, where nobody knew anything about Charleston or Mason's Pier House or the mess I'd left behind. It was a small life. But it was mine. Every once in a while, though, the past would creep back in. I'd see a shrimp po' boy on a menu and think about how we used to argue over recipes. I'd hear a song we used to blast after closing shifts and feel the tug of homesickness in my chest. Sometimes I wondered if Elena ever stood behind the bar after hours now, alone, thinking about how it all fell apart. Spring turned to summer. Summer to fall. The first Christmas after it all went down, I spent alone. I didn't decorate. Didn't even bother buying gifts. Just worked a little extra, took a few long drives, kept my head down. My parents called, left voicemails full of guilt and confusion. "We don't understand what happened. We miss you. It's Christmas, Mason. Please come home." I didn't answer. I didn't know how to explain that it wasn't about understanding. It was about believing. When the people closest to you don't believe you, not at first, not even enough to ask questions, it does something permanent. It doesn't matter what the truth is afterward. The damage is done. In late February, Elena showed up in Asheville. No warning. No text. No call. I came home from the grocery store to find her sitting on the steps of my apartment building, hands shoved deep into the pockets of an old peacoat she used to wear in college. For a second, I thought about turning around and walking the other way. Instead, I stood there, keys in my hand, grocery bags dangling at my sides, staring at her. She stood up slowly, brushing the dust off her jeans. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I answered, because what else was there to say? We stood there in the chilly February air, awkward as hell. Finally, she said, "I'm not here to fix anything. I know I can't." I didn't say anything. I just. She hesitated. "I wanted to see you. To see if you're okay." I shrugged. "I'm alive." She laughed, but it sounded broken. She shoved her hair out of her face, the way she always did when she was nervous. "You don't have to forgive me," she said. "I know I don't deserve it. I miss you, Mason." The weight of it hit me all at once, the restaurant, the years we spent building something, the childhood memories, the long nights fixing broken equipment and dreaming about expanding, the way everything shattered in a single breath. I didn't know what to do with all that hurt. All that missing. I just stood there, letting the silence stretch between us like a frayed rope. Finally, I nodded toward the door. "You want to come in?" I asked. Her eyes filled up a little, but she blinked it away fast. "Yeah. I'd like that." Inside, it was awkward. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I put the groceries away in stiff silence. She looked around, the tiny living room, the second-hand furniture, the plain walls. It was a far cry from the old house in Charleston, with its worn leather couches and creaky floors and photographs of our parents' early days running Masons. "You settled in," she said softly. I shrugged. "Something like that." We talked about surface stuff for a while. Work. Weather. Asheville's weird art scene. It was safe. Easy. But underneath, there was a whole ocean of things we weren't saying. After a while, she stood up. "I should go," she said. I nodded. She hesitated at the door, hand on the knob. "I know it's not enough," she said, voice tight. But if you ever want to come home, even just to visit, you can. I didn't answer. I couldn't. She looked like she wanted to say more, but finally, she just gave a small nod and slipped out into the fading afternoon light. I stood there for a long time after she left, staring at the closed door. In the weeks that followed, she texted occasionally. Nothing heavy. Pictures of the harbor at sunset. A joke about the terrible new hire she was training. A photo of a new pie recipe she'd tried, captioned, "Not as good as Mom's, but close." I didn't always answer. But I didn't delete them either. Life kept moving. Some nights, when the wind was just right, I could almost smell salt water on the breeze, even though I knew it was impossible this far inland. Some memories are like that. They find you when you least expect them. And they don't let go. About 2 months after Elena showed up in Asheville, I got another letter. This time, it wasn't from her. It was from Marta. I almost threw it out without opening it. Just seeing her handwriting made my stomach knot up. But something stopped me. Inside was a short note. "I'm sorry. I believed what I was told. I should have trusted what I knew about you instead of jumping to conclusions. I'm sorry for what I said. What I did. I hope you find peace, wherever you are." There was no return address. I sat there staring at it for a long time. The anger I thought was buried flared up again, not just at Marta, or Liam, or the others who turned on me so quickly, but at how small the apology felt compared to the size of what I'd lost. But strangely, I also felt something else, a kind of cold clarity. I wasn't going to get my old life back. But maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to leave the score entirely unsettled, either. That night, I started making calls. Quiet ones. Old contacts from the food industry. Vendors I had helped back when Mason's Pier House was running at full steam. Restaurateurs who still respected me, even if the public didn't know the full story. I spent weeks setting everything up carefully, piece by piece. I didn't want to hurt Elena. I didn't want to destroy what was left of Mason's Pier House. But I did want the truth, the full truth, to come out. And I wanted the people who had abandoned me to feel it. I started by opening a pop-up seafood kitchen in Asheville under a different name, Blue Water Company. It was small at first. 1 truck. Then a stall at the Saturday market. Locals loved it. Word spread fast. People raved about the authenticity, the recipes, the way it tasted like a real coastal kitchen. The recipes? They were mine. The ones Elena and I had developed over 20 years. The ones Mason's Pier House was still using. I knew them better than anyone. By midsummer, Blue Water Company had a full restaurant location opening near downtown Asheville. The kicker? I quietly franchised the concept and took it back to Charleston. It wasn't called Mason's. It wasn't even pretending to be Mason's. But when the first Blue Water Company location opened up 3 blocks away from Mason's Pier House, with a beautiful open kitchen, a gorgeous waterfront patio, and a rotating seasonal seafood menu, people noticed. Fast. Old regulars, food bloggers, curious tourists, they all came. And when they tasted the food? They remembered. They posted. They wrote reviews. They said things like, "Finally, someone bringing real low-country flavors back to Charleston." It didn't take long before people started comparing it directly to Mason's Pier House. Mason's couldn't keep up. Elena tried to modernize the menu to compete. She hired new chefs. Spent money on a flashy rebrand. But the soul of the restaurant was gone. The reviews that once praised the cozy, authentic vibe now called it stale and soulless. One night, a viral food critic, someone who had once raved about Mason's Pier House, wrote a BRTL review. "The heart of Charleston's seafood scene has moved. Mason's Pier House feels like a ghost of its former self." Meanwhile, Blue Water Company brings the flavor, the history, and the warmth we'd been missing. That review racked up shares fast. The next month, Mason's laid off half its staff. By fall, Blue Water Company was packed every night, while Mason's sat half-empty most weekends. I never rubbed it in Elena's face. I never gloated. That wasn't what this was about. It was about showing them, all of them, that I wasn't who they thought I was. That I wasn't broken. That I could rebuild bigger, better, without them. And it worked. A year after Blue Water Company opened, I saw Elena again. She walked into Blue Water Company one slow Tuesday afternoon. No reservation. Just walked in. She looked around quietly. Took it all in, the familiar smells, the old family recipes, the way people were laughing and clinking glasses and living in the way our old place used to be. When she saw me behind the counter, she froze. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she smiled. It was small, sad, real. I nodded. She didn't come over. She didn't need to. We both understood everything we needed to in that moment. She left without saying a word. Later that night, I found a note slipped under the door. You built something beautiful. I'm proud of you. Elena. I folded it once, twice, and tucked it into my back pocket. For the first time in a long time, the weight on my chest loosened just a little. Not forgiveness. Not forgetfulness. But something like peace,